Alright guys, in today's video we have some more PlayStation 5 news and information to go over and talk about, and I think you guys are going to be pretty interested in what we talk about today because we have yet another in-depth analysis that was done by an individual who is very well versed when it comes to understanding the tech behind each of these consoles and what it's going to do in the long term. And this analysis came to the conclusion that what Sony is doing with the PS5 is in many ways actually superior to what Microsoft is doing with the next generation Xbox. So I find this very interesting because the more we see these individuals who understand this technology and fully understand what is inside of these next generation consoles, the more we see them kind of really dive deep, they seem to be coming to the same conclusions, which I find very interesting. And these conclusions are definitely not going to make people feel too good if they were really kind of banking on that 12 T-flop number being the be-all end-all. So with that being said, I'm going to ask you to leave the video a like if you're excited about the PlayStation 5 or if you want to help the video out, and make sure you hit the subscribe button as well so you don't miss any future content. Now we are going to be doing a little bit of reading here, but it's important because I want to make sure that you guys fully understand this breakdown and this analysis that's being done. So let's get into it. It says, on his blog, James Prendergast has been providing a very interesting ongoing analysis of the next generation consoles based on what has been revealed so far. In his latest post, he took a look at how RAM, I/O, and SSD speed and function will make a difference considering how the CPU difference between the two consoles is minimal. We've been hearing for months that there's not much difference between the two devices from Microsoft and Sony, with sources on both sides of the argument claiming that each console has an advantage in specific scenarios. Microsoft has the more performant graphics capabilities with 1.4 times the physical makeup of the PlayStation 5's GPU core. That's only part of the story though, with the PS5 running a minimum 1.2 times faster than the Xbox across the majority of workload scenarios. That narrows the advantage of the Xbox in terms of pure average GPU compute power to around 1.18 to 1.2 times that of the PS5. But what about the CPU? Performing the same simple ratio calculation, you can work out that the Xbox is 1.2 times to 1.10 times more powerful than the PS5's depending on the scenario. Not that big of a difference really, and the CPU/GPU should sport pretty much the same feature set on both consoles. Taking a look at the RAM configuration of both consoles, the analysis highlights how the Xbox configuration is suboptimal, as the asymmetric configuration used for the console can lead to reduced bandwidth once the symmetrical portion is full. The PlayStation 5 configuration, on the other hand, allows a static bandwidth for the entire 16 GB of GDDR6. The Xbox has 2.5 GB reserved for system function, and we don't know how much the PS5 reserves for that similar functionality, but it doesn't matter. The Xbox either has only 7.5 GB of interleaved memory operating at 560 GB per second for game utilization before it has to start lowering the effective bandwidth of the memory below that of the PS5. Or the Xbox has an averaged mixed memory bandwidth that is always below that of the baseline PS4. Either option puts the Xbox at a disadvantage to the PS5 for more memory-intensive games, and the latter puts it at a disadvantage all of the time. Taking a look at the I/O and SSD access, the analysis highlights how the Xbox simply has a slower interface over the PlayStation 5's. The solution used by Sony's console allows for better data management within the RAM as well, allowing for less frequent reloading of data into the RAM, improving system efficiency. Putting everything together, including how the PlayStation 5 audio hardware will take less CPU power compared to the Xbox, the analysis reveals that the PlayStation 5 has the bandwidth and I/O silicon in place to optimize the data transfer between all the various computing and storage elements. The Xbox, on the other hand, has suboptimal implementations that are going to perform below the specifications of the PlayStation 5 despite the inclusion of smart prediction engines. Yes, the PS5 has a narrower GPU, but the system supporting the GPU is much stronger and more in line with what the GPU is expecting to be handled to it. So, I know that was a lot of reading, but as you can see here, there is another individual here who knows their stuff, and they are analyzing and comparing the specifications and the overall design decisions that were made when it comes to the hardware of these next generation consoles. And what this individual is basically saying is that Sony kind of did it better here. Like, yeah, the Xbox has a slight advantage when it comes to overall just power and graphical capability, but at the end of the day, the design decisions that Sony has made are much more significant than what Microsoft made. And one of the biggest things they highlight, this is something that I notice a lot of Xbox fans are not highlighting, because a lot of Xbox fans who get really upset when we talk about this, they don't want to hear that the 10.3 teraflop PS5 may actually be able to compete, or maybe even be better in some ways, than the 12 T-flop Xbox Series X. They don't want to hear that, and they just kind of downplay the SSD and say, oh, that's just going to result in better loading times, but all of your games are going to look worse. But they won't talk about the RAM and how there's a huge difference here between the implementation of how Sony's going to be utilizing the RAM, the 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 in the PS5, compared to how Microsoft is going to be utilizing it in the Xbox Series X. And it's made very clear here that the way Sony's utilizing it is much more significant and much more impactful and better than the way the Xbox is. And I guess I'm just highlighting this stuff because, as I've continued to say here on the channel, guys, like, I really don't think the PS5 should be underestimated, and I honestly think that the people who are continuing to run with this whole T-flop narrative, I think they're in for a rude awakening. And I know that there's going to be some people who are like, oh, this is coming from the guy who made, countless videos comparing the T-flop number. But guys, if you go back and watch those videos, you'll know I've always said that at the end of the day, I don't think the T-flop number is going to matter that much. And I've always made it clear that the only reason we entertain these conversations is because they're entertaining. And that's about it. But at the end of the day, I've always suspected that both of these consoles are going to be very, very similar in many ways, but it really does seem like a lot of people are coming to the conclusion, a lot of very tech-minded people are coming to the conclusion that a lot of the decisions that Sony has made, and specifically Mark Cerny, are very forward-thinking, and they're going to be pretty impactful for what we see with next-gen games, not just with first-party games, but even with third-party games as well. The biggest difference you may end up seeing between the next-generation Xbox and PS5 is maybe the Xbox has a slightly higher pixel count in some cases, maybe has some slightly better ray tracing, but these tech-minded people are all coming to the same conclusion that based off of what they're looking at here, you're going to be hard-pressed to notice the difference in when you in practical terms. Like, if you were to look at both right next to each other, you're going to have a hard time telling which one is the PS5 version and which one is the Xbox Series X version. So I just thought it was really important that we take time to highlight this because this isn't damage control. This is just highlighting what people are saying, what individuals, the conclusions they're coming to when they do deep dives into the PlayStation 5's architecture and the Xbox Series architecture. So finishing off this video, I want to highlight something that a developer recently had to say about the PlayStation 5, specifically its SSD. It says, speaking on a post on Reset Era, Breakfall developer Jaso Insider has heaped praise on the PS5 SSD, saying that he'd much rather see a cut in the GPU if it means having a faster drive. According to him, SSDs will be the game changer next generation. The SSDs are the game changer this generation. A fast drive is the thing I'd want to see more than anything. I'd give up GPU power for a faster drive any day. The faster the better. The Xbox drive seems fast, not sure if it's really fast enough to just start dreaming wildly, but the PS5 drive and framework/infrastructure around it sounds so fast that I just start dreaming of design within zero drive bottlenecks. Personally, I love it when new hardware can make me dream big and think of new frontiers. I'm personally not as enthused by crazy high resolutions and 15% more powerful GPUs at the moment, even though I've had a ton of fun working on shaders and tough challenges in rendering and the like. I like when hardware and software allows new ways of thinking, personal thing, and more power to you if that is the thing you like working with. And so here you go. This is a Breakfall developer. They are not a Sony developer expressing how they are really excited about what they're going to be able to do with their games because of the SSD that Sony opted to put in the PS5, literally calling it a game changer. So I'm not going to listen to some random dudes on the internet who have, you know, their excitement for the next generation Xbox. They just want to see Xbox dominate everything. I'm not going to listen to them when they say, well, the only thing you're going to see is better load times. I'm sorry. I'm not listening to that. What I'm going to listen to is a developer, not a Sony developer, saying that what Sony is doing here with the SSD is a literal game changer. So, yeah, I mean, between these developers coming out here and praising the PS5, and now we have people who are not, you know, they have no bias. They're just doing deep dives on a technical analysis of these consoles, saying that the PS5 pretty much has the advantage here. At the end of the day, you know, the only advantage that Microsoft has is basically, you know, an advantage with the GPU that may result in some slightly higher resolutions, but I don't think at the end of the day really anybody's going to care about that. I mean, we are at the point of, this is the law of diminishing returns. You're not going to see the same difference you saw with the PS4 and the Xbox One, so get that out of your head right now. You're not going to see 1080p versus 720p games. It's not going to be that big of a difference at all. You're probably not even going to be able to notice it. I mean, when you look at 1080p and 720p, you can clearly see a visual difference there. However, if you're looking at, like, you know, native 4K versus like you know, like a dynamic 4K resolution, it's really difficult to actually tell the difference there, depending, of course. But, you know, this is the big difference we may see. We may see developers doing some things on the PS5 that you're just not going to see anywhere else. We're going to have to see about that, but I'm just glad to hear this because as somebody who is very excited for the PS5, it really sounds like Sony knows what they're doing here, and Mark Cerny, you know, made the smart design decisions that needed to be made in order to kind of really push the gaming medium forward. It's not just about higher frame rates, purely just higher frame rates and higher resolutions, but it's about actual game design in general. So yeah, that's going to do it for the video, guys. Let me know your thoughts about this down in the comments below. I will be very interested to see what you have to say. Again, leave the video a like if you did enjoy it or if you found it informative. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.